Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel, where I now have the sword. I have the sword of the King Aragorn, and it's the best day ever. It's literally the fucking best day ever. It's hanging out in the background right now, and I have the best girlfriend of all time as well. So with all of that said, I wanted to follow up on some higher term time frame ideas that we've been looking at for the past week now. We have two major signals, one of them confirming or denying tonight, I suppose, and the next one following tomorrow, which is actually the big one, the one that I'd really be paying attention to if we are going to see major continuation on this current move. Other than that, I wanted to say a sincere and heartfelt thank you for all of the birthday wishes, all the birthday support, all the birthday love that I've been showered with for the past couple days. It feels like I don't really know how to deal with it, to be honest with you, but I do want to say a massive thank you. Other than that, what else do we have? We have a birthday sale, I suppose. Birthday sale, as always. Make sure to watch the promotional videos that go alongside any one of the programs or indicators. They're going to explain who they're for, who they're not for, so you can make an educated decision for yourself, because it very well might be, especially with the TA program or the options program, which are very long and also big financial commitments, that it might just not be for you. All right, sweet. Let's jump into it right now. Let's start it off right in over here, shall we? So this is the 2-day time frame signal for CME. Keep in mind, CME not trading today, or it will technically open up later today on Sunday, but the big signal is coming in potentially as soon as tomorrow night, Monday. So what essentially is the signal, and what are we looking at right here? Well, the signal is this. Anytime that we do see the 2-day volatility, which is actually the volatility of stochastic momentum, which is represented by this moving metric that my cursor is currently tracing, gets down to extreme lows, which I define as basically anywhere around this green horizontal bar, of which we've seen many in the past 4 years now. The expansion phase from these extreme lows had led to an average move of about 39.43%, done over the course of about 3.5 weeks. Stochastic momentum also has gone the correct direction on the volatility expansion 87.5% of the time. And if we were to look at just the first standard deviation for these results, it would create a range between about 32% all the way up to, just under 47%, which is rather large. Now, again, when we're talking about statistics, and we're talking about averages over here, there's going to be some variance in this, obviously, but the first standard deviation essentially shows us where we expect 68% of the results to fall in between. So with that said, right now, the 2-day stochastic momentum oscillator is obviously angled towards the downside. There are two considerations here, though. One, yes, it is angled to the downside and will be remaining with downside pressure as long as Bitcoin is below the 21,650 momentum pivot. But because it is getting into this region right here, where it is at extremes, onto the downside for the stochastic oscillator, well, that does make it quite difficult for momentum to be maintained at that level to the downside. So if you do want a little bit of hopium, I suppose that would be it, and we'd start to really expect to see a curling around of this and Bitcoin to pop back above the relevant levels, which we'll speak about soon enough. Probably around midpoint this week, if I had to guess. Latest would be end of this coming week. So that is what that essentially would imply. But for right now, as long as that is angled to the downside, the probabilities and statistics remain towards downside pressure. And applying these stats over here to the downside from the volatility expansion level, well, we could come up with that range actually to the downside as it is for now. So in this case, we have already seen about a 13% move to the downside. That is, it's definitely not significant, but it would be the lowest move that we've seen from this particular signal for the past 3-4 years now. If we were to go all the way to the bottom side of the first deviation, which is 32% from the signal given, that would put Bitcoin at around $15,000-ish dollars. 47% puts it much lower. Obviously, you can do the math on that. I don't necessarily feel comfortable doing it right now. I'd want to see like some first major downside targets hit to begin with. And of course, there would be bounces along the way as well. But again, as long as Bitcoin is below this momentum pivot, it's not but the statistics are pointing towards more downside. So moving on into the next chart over here. What else do we have? Before we get into this chart, I did also want to reference the weekly, which is closing tonight. So not the same as the 2-day, but it is closing tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern time. And the weekly for spot price action has a momentum pivot, as you can see here, just below 20,900. So we've all seen crazier things in like a $1,200 rally in the course of 16 hours, 26 minutes, and 27 seconds. But for right now, it is still well below, I would say. So again, coming into closure tonight, if Bitcoin remains below that level, momentum on the weekly scale turns back down. And you could also interpret this as a trend line regression rejection right here as well. keeping the weekly stochastic within the bearish control zone. But same thing on this one as we just spoke about on the 2-day time frame over here, where you see the stochastic momentum oscillator get into these really extreme regions, which on the weekly is not quite there just yet. It makes it more difficult for momentum to be remained at that level to the downside. So a lot of the times when you do see something like this, where it makes that initial move to the downside, then pops back up, gets rejected, you'll see it come back down again, put in a higher low on the oscillator, typically not on price action, thus creating divergence. And then once it twists up again, that's at the point where it actually is typically a good do to the upside. But for right now, yes, as long as Bitcoin's below this level tonight, momentum remains down on the weekly. And of course, this is just a follow through what we saw on CME, which already closed the weekly on Friday, and same shit over here, closed well below the momentum pivot at 21,500. So, very, very likely we do see that same thing on spot price action as well. All right, cool. Or, well, maybe not cool. Maybe not cool for many people out there. But let's now go over and check out CME yet again. So we spoke about this briefly yesterday, and I do want to make this video a little bit more on the shorter side because I think that things are rather, clear right here. And I wanted to come up with a first major warning red flag, if that's not redundant enough, of basically where I would start to say, hey, things are shifting around and we're probably going to see this move faded. It's probably going to be a trap, and you're probably going to see a nice rally somewhere between $22,500 to $23,000. That would be if Bitcoin pops back above basically the high side of, I'm guessing, yeah, this was the high side of our last week's range, which is about 20,500. Even just popping back above Friday's high, or I think it was Friday's high. Yeah, it was Friday's high. The second. That's actually my birthday right there. The 2nd of September. The high of that. If we do even see a move back above that region, which was 20,400 or so, that would be a good indication that we are going to see a trap from these regions, and you're probably going to see another $2,000 rip to the upside, maybe even more over time. But for right now, again, what do we have right here? Well, we have extremely low BBWP. So a move is a brewing as upon CME open later today. Again, it is not trading right now, but later today it will be. And that low volatility is within the environment of hidden bearish divergence of multiple drives over here. This is for CME, for spot price action. I think it's actually relatively similar. We have that same sort of hidden bearish divergence over here. This one's a little bit further away from current, from our current highs, obviously, but the CME one should take, should take hold early this week if it's going to play out, like meaning Monday, basically. On top of that, if we scroll back on over here and look at short-term, or maybe not short-term just yet, but stochastic momentum on the daily for spot price action, momentum will actually turn back again to the downside, again, in a really critical zone right here. This is what makes it very, very difficult for right now. With any sort of a closure today below 19,740, which Bitcoin's currently $30 below. That's pretty much irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. But hey, as long as Bitcoin's below there, well, as long as Bitcoin's below there, where I'm going with that. Here's the thing though, volatility has yet again collapsed on the daily over here. So we probably are brewing for, a nice big move. And the thing is that when the stochastic oscillator gets within this region, it's just difficult to keep it down within this region. So, again, as long as it's below this region, it will stay down, but that number is going to naturally change and probably move even further down upon tonight's closure. Anyways, moving on to the 12-hour, we can see that the 12-hour momentum pivot is also turning down simultaneously with any sort of a closure below 19,800 after a bit of a corrective bounce right there, or attempt for a bounce, if you will. Can barely even call it that. 6-hour is also going to be nosediving below 19,930. The 4-hour is also going to be headed down as long as Bitcoin's below about 19,900. And the hourly, I believe, is freshly down. And yes, indeed it is, as long as Bitcoin's below 19,750 or so. So again, putting all the puzzle pieces together can kind of wrap up this talk by saying, as long as Bitcoin's below, not yesterday's, but Friday's high, I do look at this as, well, more than likely to play to the downside. Remember, on CME over here, I think it's a little more obvious, but we do have a bit of a descending triangle going on right now. Descending triangles or any formations in the way that I look at them, not that I look at many of them because I think that most of them are just Jesus toast, but in this case, the only way to play them, in my opinion, is to actually wait for the confirmed breakout or breakdown, in which always comes down to like a horizontal boundary. In this case, that would be to the downside below about 19,400. At that point, there is an implied target, which would be pointed down towards the area between about 18,000 even to 18,500 or so. So If we do see a move below that region, yeah, I'd probably be looking for Bitcoin to put that in early this coming week, and we come back to it after that. But what has me concerned with like any sort of major downside continuation move here is, it's just simply this. When we look at the stochastic for the daily, for example, as well as other timeframes that we already observed, it's in such extreme areas already. It's going to be very difficult to keep down there. So I do want to keep open the potential for a trap. In my opinion, that would be any sort of a move back above last Friday's high, about 19,000, or sorry, not 19, but 20,400 or so above there. Yes, there will be stops along the way, very likely somewhere around 21 and then 21.7, but likely a move towards 22.5 to somewhere between there and 23 if that were to happen. But for right now, as long as these levels are maintained, well, I still look at things as more likely to move to the downside, and I think that is a good place to leave this one off. I want to take a second to wish you well, wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully soon.